You know, it's kind of wild. I've been in this studio for 5 years now, and I still refer to it as the new studio. So this is my third studio space that I've had commercially. If you follow any of my short form video stuff, you've seen this view a lot, and you've seen it in these longer form videos too. But there's a whole lot more studio here. So let me give you guys a tour of the entire space and walk you through some of my thought process on why I've set things up the way that I did and how I use the space, and maybe some changes that I'm thinking about making as time goes on. A little bit of brief history. So I started my photography business without knowing what in the blue hell I was doing or wanted to do or anything. And a lot of my first sessions were actually done in my kitchen in a small shotgun house here in Louisville. If you're not familiar with shotgun houses, they're a small, narrow house, and they were built that way for workers, and they'd lower taxes, blah, blah, blah. You can Google shotgun house. But it was a small space, and that's where I started. Then my wife and I moved to a different house where we still are now. I ran the studio out of my house for a while in what's currently my bedroom. Then my first actual studio space was on 3rd and Broadway here in Louisville in a building called the Hayburn Building. And I really actually liked that space. It had a lot of character. The building was cool. And it was just one big room. It was like a 600 square foot room, but it was just the room, right? So I didn't have bathrooms or a changing room or anything. So I had just a makeup table set up in the space. And if people needed to change clothes, I would set up folding screens so they could change behind those. Then my second, to me, space was at 6 and Main here in Louisville, and I did a lot of videos from there. That space, I loved that space. It was in a cool old historic building in downtown Louisville. Also a shotgun building. There's a lot of those buildings were then, and it was, when it was first built, it was used as like whiskey storage and things because it was like right on the river. So, the paddle boats would come in and they would use it to store things and then put them back on the boats and whatever. That space was haunted, like very, very haunted. I caught several orbs on. I have motion cameras set up for security when I'm not here. I'm pointing at one like you can see it. But it would catch orbs, and people go, oh, it was dust. There were other things that happened too. I could do a whole other video on ghost stories, but this studio is not haunted, so it wouldn't be nearly as fun. So when that space ended, the only reason I decided to leave that space was the landlord moved some neighbors in next to me who weren't ideal. It was a weird vibe, and there was just weird stuff going on. And a lot of my clients didn't like having to deal with parking downtown. So I moved to this space, which is in a shopping center, which I never thought I'd be in a shopping center either. But because I'm kind of tucked into a little cove back here, it's very doable. And the parking is very easy. I have street level parking, or, my door is at street level, which is great because then when I go on location, I can back my car right up to my door, throw all my gear in and peel out, so I'm not having to take stuff up and down stairs or elevators. But whatever, let me give you a tour, show you what this place is all about. So let's actually start here. This is the first thing that people see when they walk into the studio. This is the front door to the space. I wanted this space to feel very comfortable, like it could be somebody's living room. I wanted people to be able to envision themselves at home, right? And I wanted it to feel homey. And I'm also here as much as I'm at home. So I wanted it to feel like home to me. And some of these things are actually from my home as things have shifted. This couch actually came from my parents. It was one that they had replaced and it needed a new home. This worked. These end tables, these end tables came from the last studio. But the whole point of this, which is a waiting area, which is a greeting area, was to be homey, but then also as a way to show the work and what I do. And you'll see throughout the space, I refer to this whole side of the studio as the gallery. And the point of the gallery is to show the space and to allow people to kind of start to envision what sizes may look like in their homes. You know, another thing that makes it feel like home, this is Cedric. This is my boy. So sometimes he comes to the studio with me, but when he's not here with me, he's with me. So that helps. And little known fact, I never actually intended on being a boudoir photographer until I created this image. And once I created this and put this image out, it started getting me phone calls from people going, oh, you do an artistic style of boudoir photography. I would like to. So that is actually what launched the boudoir side of my business. I can do a whole other video on that, my style of boudoir and whatever, but that one is a very integral piece. I'll show you another integral piece that actually launched the portrait side of it in a second. And this is the other part of what I call the gallery. So if you come in through the front door and just kept going straight, you would end up here. Also, needed to feel homey, needed to feel comfortable. And I think I've done that well. Now currently, the art on the back wall is changing. I'm moving things around. So you're gonna see some things around here where I'm moving art, and that's something that I always do. Because I move art around and change things, I knew that I didn't want to just be putting nail holes in the wall all the time. So I went with a picture rail system. So if you'll notice on all of these, there's these come here. Everything is hanging on a rod. So if you look up here, and I have a rail that I've installed all the way around the space. So that's mounted in the stud. I have the picture rails. I can just take these rails off and move them at will. And some of the pieces, like Laura here in this ginormous frame, require multiple rods to hold it up because that frame is heavy. And another important thing to note is any piece of furniture, almost any piece of furniture in the space that's not in that room is available to go in for portraits. The secretary really can't go because it's hard to move without breaking things. But any of the couches or chairs or anything like that are, hold on, I gotta turn back to the light. Couches or chairs or anything that are out here are fair game to go in for portraits. I look at anything in the studio kind of the same way that Alton Brown did on old episodes of Good Eats, where he would say there's no multitasker, there's no unitaskers in the kitchen except for the fire extinguisher. It's the same way with things here. So almost every piece of furniture in this space, almost, has been put into the portrait situation at some point in time. But speaking of the room that I don't drag furniture out of, let me show you my sales room. Okay, I'm gonna do this from a couple different angles, but I have a room dedicated just to my sales process. So again, I have larger prints on the wall, and I'm gonna talk about this one in the center in a second. I do that because A, I like being surrounded by beautiful things. B, I'm very proud of my work, and like one of my goals in the future, hopefully while I'm still alive to see it, is that some of my work makes it to a museum. In the meantime, I can still treat my work like it's in a museum, but then it's also to give people an idea of what sizes are when we're talking about doing things for their walls. So, you know, people will come in and be like, oh, you know, like an 8x10, that's gonna be like the right size for my wall, and an 8x10, like over a piece of furniture like that would look 100% ridiculous, especially if you did it on its own. If you're doing a grouping, that's a whole other thing. So I show prints at the size that is appropriate for where they're going to be hung. I'm sorry I'm having to censor this one. Some prints go a bit larger. So this is Persephone. This is actually a creative piece that I did a few years ago. First time I tried doing a big composite. So I photographed the model as Persephone in a studio on gray paper, and then I built the world around her. I went down to the falls of the Ohio and photographed all of the elements. So I built the antechamber to the underworld. This piece is a 4-foot by 6-foot piece. And I went that size because I could, for one, and I love giant prints. But then also I needed to show a big piece over a piece of furniture. So I have this lovely leather couch, and it was the perfect thing to fill that wall. So speaking of the couch, when we finish a portrait and boudoir session here in the studio, this is where we come. I sell directly out of camera, so I'm not editing images before somebody buys those images. So when we finish a portrait and boudoir session, we come in here, the client gets to hang out on the couch, I hang out in the chair over here, and then I airdrop from my Mac directly to this 65-inch TV. I do everything directly out of Capture One. So I know there's a lot of other pieces of software and things that you can do. Since I've already tethered into the software, I just use that to show my clients their images. It's just easier that way. I fully believe in showing people their images as large as possible, which is why I have a 65-inch TV. I don't have room for a projector and all that stuff, but now that large TVs are so much more affordable, and they weren't when I first started doing this, it's just easy to do. And the reason I like to show them big is it's easier to sell big prints if you show big prints. Said I was going to talk about this piece. So this was the piece that actually launched my version of portrait work. If you've been following along for a minute, I built the business with professional headshot photography and acting headshots. Later, I started moving into portrait work and figuring out what I wanted to do with that. This is the first one that I created that I was really, really proud of. In the Main Street studio, this was the first piece to get printed and the first one to go into a frame. And the day I put it in the frame, there was like really nothing on the wall in the space yet. And I hung it directly next to the door and I had a light on it. And then I stepped back to look at it. And you know the scene in Ferris Bueller where Cameron is just staring at the piece by George Seurat. Am I getting that name right? I just forgot the name of the painting. It's the pointillism one, Le Grand Jatte. But where it was like the scene in Ferris Bueller. 45 minutes later, I stood up from my chair and was like, oh, I've been just lost in this piece. So this launched the portrait side of the photography business. This is a bridal portrait. This is Hannah. She handmade that dress. Absolutely, I love that portrait. And so if this is the homey side of the space where we get comfortable and hang out and people can wait if they're doing whatever, then this is the working side of the space. So one of the things that I love about that is sometimes people will say, can I bring somebody to my photo shoot with me? And I say, that's great. But what I typically recommend is that if you bring somebody with you, that they don't necessarily sit and watch the photo shoot itself. And the reason is because when people feel that there's additional eyeballs on them, then they can feel like they're acting. They can stress out a little bit. So being able to go, yes, your friends can be here. Why don't we have them hang out over in the lobby area, over in the gallery while we're working, and then when we review images, have them come hang out with us. Now, that said, if somebody's like, no, I want them in the working space the whole time, then obviously they can hang out in the working space. But we have the option that they can be here and be close, but not necessarily be an audience if that's going to cause stress. And then this is where all of the headshots happen. So this is my standard headshot setup. So people walk in and we're just right into that. But then I have all of this space. So this side of the studio is about 1,000 square feet. I have it separated, like back behind that drop is where the makeup room is, and I'll show you that in a second. But I have all the room I need here. Like that particular setup, I can use it for individuals, but it's also great if I have a group in here and I can do a lot of different things. So versatility is key. On the headshot setup, I typically shoot things just on white. And I don't have to use the white vinyl backdrop. I could just use the wall behind it, but there's a plug back there too, so I like to cover that up. But I've also got painted drops ready to go up there, so I can do that. And then in this setup, I've got 3 more painted drops. These are all from Gravity. What I may end up doing in the near future is actually taking all of these drops off of their rollers and just stapling all of them to the wall, because these are all bigger. So I'm not able to stack them the way that I want to, but I think what I'm gonna do, staple these up and then get some smaller ones so I can do corners here and there. But I also have beautiful natural light, which the iPhone, I'm recording this on iPhone today because I didn't like moving lights everywhere. So I have beautiful natural light, which I will also use. It just depends on what I'm shooting, what I need the quality of the light to be. And then next to the big gray drops for groups, got the makeup room. When people come to the studio and they have multiple clothing changes, this is where we come. So people will hang their garments up here, hair and makeup work here. I wanted the makeup space to be very close to the actual working space so that transitions could happen very quickly and people weren't having to run back and forth. At my old studio space on Main Street, that distance was huge. So the working space was at one side of the space and the makeup space was all the way at the other side of the space. So it would just take time. Here we can flow back and forth between things very, very quickly. The one thing that my makeup artist did request back here, she wanted good lighting. So the lighting that I put above her space is all daylight balanced stuff. And then she also requested a light from the Makeup Light. The Makeup Light, if you're not familiar with them. So this is what she uses. So she has good color tone on her light when she's doing makeup. Shameless plug, I'm an affiliate for the Makeup Light. So in the description, if you ever want to check products out from them, I think if you use my code, which is just my name, it's in the description, I think you get a 10% discount on their stuff. It's good, I like it. I'm not really using this video to sell things, but if I can save you a nickel, awesome. And I do have a small studio wardrobe. Honestly, I'm probably gonna sell it because most people don't use it. And the whole reason I bought a wardrobe is I was influenced by other big name photographers who would, you know, have wardrobes that people use and love, and that's great. My clients just don't use it. So all of these things are just sitting and collecting dust. If they're gonna just collect dust here, I'd rather them go to people who are either gonna use them for photo shoots, or some of these things are great for people who, you know, gonna go out and do events or whatever. So probably I'm gonna start selling that stuff. Of course, I've been saying that for 2 years and there it is. Then the most neglected spot in the studio is my office. It's neglected because I'm the only one that sees it, so I go, it's fine. I'll just, you know, I'll get around to it when I get around to it, and then I just haven't gotten around to it yet. So because clients don't see it, like I haven't changed out the ceiling in there. It got painted and that sort of thing, but it's not finished. So I'm not gonna show you that. This piece, actually, it's only here. This was from a Vanitas series that I did pre-COVID. I did the Vanitas series, 4 images in that. A couple years ago now, guys, it's really been that long, year and a half. I did a gallery showing in the studio where I did a big party. This piece was at home, so I brought it in here to be a part of the showing. All 4 of the Vanitas pieces were here, and I just haven't taken it home yet because at the size of that frame, it's a pain to move. So I've got to get that back home. Speaking of frames, I do get asked quite frequently, where I get all of my frames, and I will do a whole other video on that because this one's already running longer than I thought it was going to. But my frames come from a lot of different places, so I will do a video on that. Maybe we'll go out shopping for, like, I'll take you out with me. That'll be a fun one. So anyway, if you made it this far, that's the studio, and it's forever moving and changing. I love being here. My clients love being here. You know, when everybody walks through the door, you know, there's always oh, this place is really nice. And, you know, there have been many times where people just get comfortable and we end up in conversation. And, you know, a couple hours later, I have to be like, thank you so much for hanging out with me. You gotta go. I got work to do. And that is like the best problem on earth to have, because if people feel comfortable here, that's what I want. This place is meant to be comfortable and homey, and a space that feels safe and welcoming. And I think it's done all of that. So if you have questions about the space, or if there's anything in particular that you want to see, let me know. And I'll do a frame video soon. Thanks for hanging. Been doing this too long. I gotta go to work.